Howdy, and welcome to this Canvas Gradebook webinar. So we're going to get started with Canvas Gradebook today. In our agenda, first of all, I want to share that we're here to support you with your Canvas and your course development questions. And you can get help by sending an email to engrlearntech@tamu.edu. Another way you can get help is by going to our website, which is learntech.engr.tamu.edu. And on that page, we have a list of our live and recorded workshops. So if you miss a workshop, you can a lot of times find the recording on the website here, and that's our website. Another place that you can find help is also on the Office of Academic Innovation's website, which is lms.tamu.edu. Putting that link in there as well. And on this site, they have a lot of support for the transition over to Canvas as well. And they also have many YouTube videos that are also very helpful. Our agenda today is going to go over some of the basic questions for that we get for Gradebook, starting from where can I see grades all the way to what do you need to do at the end of the semester. And so our objective today is hopefully that you will be able to successfully navigate and use Canvas Gradebook features in order to finalize grades. So at the very beginning, where can I see grades? So the grade columns are visible in the grades section of the course navigation menu. The course navigation menu is found on the left-hand side of the page. And it looks like this image that we have in the center. But sometimes the course navigation menu is not visible. So if you do not see the course navigation menu, then you look for the 3-line symbol that I have circled in orange up here at the top. And when you click that, it will expand the menu. And then you can look down for the grades section. What does the gradebook look like in Canvas? So here is just a screenshot of the grade columns in Canvas. Here is each individual assignment in a column, very familiar layout, similar to eCampus. So grade columns are automatically created for each assignment and quiz. And this is what they look like. On the far right of the grade columns, you may see additional columns that have a percentage at the bottom. And this is if you've set up assignment groups, and it'll show students their running total in any assignment category that you've created. So these columns, both the grade columns and the total columns can be hidden from students, but the total columns can either all be hidden or all be visible. They cannot be hidden selectively, whereas the individual grades can be hidden one by one. So where can you see student submissions? So if you click on the published assignment or quiz title anywhere in the course, whether that's in Gradebook or on the modules page or on the assignments page, whenever you click on that title, it will take you to the details page for the assignment or the quiz. And then in the sidebar menu on the right side of the page, you have options to either download all the files if you have file submissions, and it'll group those into a zip folder, or you can open SpeedGrader, and that's how you would access inline grading abilities. Another way to access the SpeedGrader function is in the Gradebook on the 3-dot menu. If you click that and open it, you will see the SpeedGrader option. But in order to download, you do have to go to the quiz details page. That's the only place you'll be able to download. Once you're within the Gradebook, important functions are being able to order or filter your grade columns. And so you can do this in 2 different ways. You can, one way you can order your columns is just by dragging and dropping them, and that can reorder them horizontally. Or alternatively, you can click on View, Arrange By, and then you can have them appear horizontally according to due dates or points or module. Then if you're having trouble finding an assignment, you can use filters. And when you enable the filters by clicking on view and then filters, it will open up a drop-down box on the top right corner of the grade book. And then you can click that drop-down menu and isolate by module or by assignment group to really quickly be able to find the grade column that you're looking for. So that's very helpful if you're quickly trying to make a change in the midterm column. You can, without having to scroll through 20 or 30 columns, you can quickly rule it out using the drop-down filters. Within the column, sometimes you would wish to arrange the student results vertically in order to highlight students who are missing a grade or view the grades from high to low. And the way that you can do that is through clicking on the 3 dots in the column header, and that will allow you to sort student grades within the column. And then you can sort by grade, by missing, or by late. And there's also the ability to color code the column. Each cell can be color coded by statuses, and you can set up your own colors. And this would allow you to visually look across the field and quickly identify whatever characteristics are important to you. So for example, students who are missing assignments, you can have those coded red so that you can quickly identify who's missing assignments. And you can customize these colors. So if you don't want so many, you might change some of them to white. The only thing I would recommend is do not use your background color as black, because then you won't be able to see your text. On the top right of the gradebook, you're going to see a search bar. And a lot of times I hear the question, what does the search bar do? And the search bar has one function, which is to search by student name. And this allows you to quickly isolate the grades and the submissions for one student. So that's what the search bar is for. Now, one of the most common functions that faculty and instructors need to do is to add a column to the gradebook that's not necessarily attached to a quiz. So in Canvas, all gradebook columns are associated with an assignment or a quiz. So in order to create an extra gradebook column for paper quiz, you will not see that in the gradebook menu. Instead, what you'll need to do is create a new assignment. And then within the assignment, you will see a submission type area in the settings. And then you will select either no submission or on paper. This will allow you to create a new column and manually input those grades or upload those grades from a CSV file. Now, what is the difference between no submission and on paper? Well, on paper is an indication that will be communicated to the students, which allows them to see the assignment and the due date and be reminded of that assignment and know that that is an assignment that they will turn in class as a paper-based assignment, as opposed to an assignment that is turned in online. So this is good in settings, especially where you're using the Canvas as a gradebook, but you're not necessarily using Canvas for the full class experience if your class is not online. Another really important question is, how can I hide all grades from students? So if you notice within the gradebook at the far right corner, you will see a gear icon. And when you click on that gear icon, it gives you some options. And the most important option here is your grade posting policy. So here is where you can set whether you want all of the grades to be automatically visible to students or whether you want to manually post grades. So this is important, especially if you have a self-grading quiz, a quiz that grades itself. And if you don't want that grade to be their final grade, you want to make sure that those students are not able to automatically see those grades. You want the chance to change those grades before they're visible. So here's where you would select manually post grades. Now, you can do this individually for each grade column, or you can set a grade posting policy for your entire course. And that's why it says all grades here. This is where you set your grading policy for the entire course. On the other hand, if you'd like to only hide specific grades from students, you can set the grade posting policy for a single column within the column 3-dot menu. Now, here's some caveats on this information. So these hide and post options are only available after one grade has been entered. So you can use the test student to enter a grade and then hide and post grades, but how it's meant to be used is that you would set the grade posting policy for the column before you enter the grades. After you enter the grades, then you can use the hide and the post grades to make those grades available or hide them from students as you desire. Another important function in the gradebook is how can you export an Excel file of the gradebook? And you can export a file, and you can then input your grades and import it again. And that is within the Actions menu on the top left-hand corner of the gradebook. So in the Actions menu, you can see Export, and that will give you your file where you can put in your student grades. And then Import will allow you to pull in that file, and the grades will be, the grades that you put onto your Excel sheet then can be added into the gradebook. And this can save you from having to individually type grades when you're manually putting grades into the gradebook. Now, we're going to discuss assignment groups a little bit. That's underneath the question, how can I group and organize my grades? So Canvas has a feature called assignment groups. Assignment groups is a way that you can create weighted categories for your assignments and quizzes that would match your syllabus. So here, in my example image, I have 6 categories, and each of these categories, all of the assignments are worth 40% of the total grade. Labs are worth 10%, quizzes are worth 10%, homework is worth 10%, the midterm exam is 15%, and the final exam is 15% of the total. This will create groups, and groups will then calculate based on the assignments that are within a group. So here is what the assignment groups looks like. On the assignments page, if you click on the assignments tab in the course navigation menu, you'll see a couple of features here. So first of all, these are the individual assignments, and then the gray title bar indicates the group that they're part of. You can move assignments between groups simply by dragging and dropping them into a new group by scrolling over these 6 dots on the far left. You can assign the group weights so that all of the group assignments are averaged and weighted for the final grade. You can create a group that does not contribute to the final grade by specifying that percentage as 0. And you can add a group by clicking on the group, the add group icon at the top right of the page. So you can set the group totals by clicking on the 3-dot menu that's over on the right-hand corner of each group, but also you can do it in a batch by clicking on the 3-dot menu at the top right-hand of the assignments group page, which will allow you then to customize all of the grade percentages and view the total. Why do we use assignment groups? So assignment groups is the way to set up a weighted total. All of the graded assignments then are organized into groups and a weighted percentage is assigned to each group. However, you do not necessarily need to use assignment groups. You can also use a calculated total, and that is when you do not have any assignment groups. And these then assignments are weighted equally, where a point is a point. And this is actually the default setup in Canvas. So these are two options that you have available to you when you're organizing your grades. Okay, so a couple of other questions that frequently come up. How can I drop or ignore lowest scores? So that is within the assignment group setting. And that is on this 3-dot menu for each group. You can click on that, and that will allow you to set the policy for the grades within that group. How can I quickly give all students the same grade or input 0 for all missing grades? And so this is within the 3-dot menu on the gradebook column for that assignment. Then you can click on default grade, and that will allow you to set a grade for all of the missing grades. How can you see when a grade change happened? So this is helpful when you have more than one person grading in your course and are not sure what happened. You can view gradebook history in the gradebook menu. That is at the top left of the gradebook. And a really important question is, if you do not want students to view the totals for your assignment groups, how can you hide that? And that is within the settings, course details, on the settings menu on the course navigation menu. This is relevant when you have raw scores and a final score, and your raw scores are different from, for example, if you have a midterm where the raw scores, you're going to add a new column with the actual final score, and you don't want your students to become agitated. You will need to hide the total in that assignment group so that they can't see that total will not reflect the final grade. Okay.
Yes, Christine, if you go back one slide, please. I wanted to ask where you mentioned how to input 0 for all missing grades. Yeah, this has been something that I have always been looking for a better solution to in eCampus. So in this case, like you mentioned, do we still have to individually enter 0? Yeah, what I want is that once the deadline passes, if someone has not submitted an assignment or a test, the LMS automatically gives a 0. Is it possible?
Yes. So that will be found within this gear menu here.
Yes.
And then that's under late policies.
Okay, great.
So then what you can do is automatically apply grade for missing submissions, and then you can put a 0. Oops.
Oh, great.
Right.
That's a great feature.
Yes. So you
I
can
like
do
it.
that.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Okay. So there are some keyboard shortcuts for grading. These are the keyboard shortcuts for grading, and you can see those right here next to the search bar if you would like to use them. Okay, so last of all, we're going to go over a checklist of what does a professor need to check at the end of a semester. So this is a checklist that we have here, and then we'll go over some of the details of this checklist. So before you finalize grades at the end of a semester, you should check your grading scheme and verify it matches your syllabus. You should make sure, if you're using assignment groups, make sure that your groups are set up and the assignments are in the correct group. You'll want to have all your grades entered and make sure that no grades are blank or missing. Make sure that the grades are posted and visible to students. Download a copy of your grades for your records if you'd like to. And check the permissions for student access. And then finally submit your grades to Howdy. So some of those are kind of things that we've already gone over, but we will check first. We will talk about a few of them that we haven't talked about. So first is, how do I check or change the grading scheme of my course? So the grading scheme is located within the settings menu. Within course details, you can enable course grading scheme and then view the grading scheme. So I'll show you that. Course navigation menu, go to settings. And then here is where the grading scheme is. And you can click on view the grading scheme. And this is where you can just verify that this is matching your syllabus. So usually it's set to a default that's correct, but it's always a good idea to double check. Okay. So another thing you might note in the same place is concluding your course. And this is usually automatically populated by AI. And then you would want to just check and make sure that those settings are set to your liking. Submitting the grades to Howdy. The instructions are found on the lms.tamu.edu. I cannot walk you through that because I do not have access to that because I don't have a course currently. An important thing to know about submitting grades to Howdy is that there are specific times when that occurs. So you want to make sure that you get those done within the time frame that's necessary. Okay, so a couple of common mistakes that happen with setting up your grade book for the end of the semester. One is putting assignments that don't belong into an assignment group that has a grading rule. So this can make your total for that grade, for that assignment group, to be incorrect. I'm going to actually skip over that. Those are all very complex cases. So another thing that can also occur is that if you did not put a 0 for a missing assignment, students will see an average that's significantly higher than their actual grade. And we know that then that leads to students being unpleasantly disappointed, and then a mess that has to be sorted through. Another issue is failing to specify total points when setting up a required assignment, and that will also mess up your grade weighting as well. And then if your grade scheme isn't set up, then the grade total column won't calculate correctly. Okay, so this is the checklist one last time. And I'm going to move forward if there's no questions on this. Okay, so there's an instructor guide within the Canvas community. Highly recommend looking into the instructor guide when you're learning how to use the gradebook. There's a learning curve when moving from eCampus gradebook to Canvas gradebook, because things do not seem like they're set up intuitively. So expect to have some challenges and some unexpected things as you work through that. And you can find a lot of resources on the instructor guide, and of course on the resources that I listed at the beginning of the presentation as well. But once you get everything set up, it's going to be a lot easier for your next semester.